You're listening to WRC 88.7 FM, Elmhurst College Radio. This is Good Times Friday, and every Friday from 8 to 10 p.m. You are also tuned into Good Times Radio TV, and we want to thank you all for being here. Now today we have a guest in studio, which is great because we have guests every single week. But this guest is specifically one of my personal heroes. Being a Mexican American, I've got to say that having Mr. Robert Renteria in studio here with us is really something great. So, Robert, sir, how are you doing tonight?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Arthur, man, how are you doing, dude?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks, Jim.
Definitely. So, Robert, you wrote a book titled "From the Barrio to the Boardroom," and we're going to talk to you a bit about that. It is a book based on your life and just everything that you learned from it and how your experiences helped you to become who you are today. So just really quick, I just wanted to kind of start with that. This book is all about you growing up in East LA, in a barrio in East LA, and it goes on to talk about all these different trials that your life put before you and how you dealt with them and how they kind of helped you to be who you are today. And one of those things was your father leaving, and you were raised by your mom, and something that happened to you when you were 6 years old along the lines of you were in some kind of a very rough carnival accident. Would you want to talk to us just a bit about that, your first 10 years growing up?
Well, first of all, the book itself, From the Barrio to the Boardroom, has my name on it, Robert Renteria, but it's not the Robert Renteria story. See, it's your story, it's our story. It's a story of a lot of people worked hard, made a lot of sacrifices, and have done whatever we need to do legally minded to come out clean on the other side. It's a story about hope and dreams and guts and desire, and yes, you can if you believe. Mm-hmm. See, belief's like air. Even though we can't see air, we still breathe. And even though we can't see God, we still believe, right?
Yes.
That's called faith. Faith to be anybody you want to be. You know, when I was 6 years old, I went to a carnival with the family, and there was a ride called the Octopus. And I got off the ride, and I had to go back in because I dropped something. And while I was looking for it, the gentleman who was running the ride started the ride. And when I came out, it hit me. It abruptly started and hit me on the side of the head and lunged me some 50 feet, leaving me on the ground bleeding profusely. The ambulance took about 15 minutes or so to get there. It was chaos. It was pandemonium. People were screaming and fainting. And the ambulance came to pick me up, took me to a hospital. They're not equipped to take care of me, so they took me to a second hospital. By chance of a miracle, there was a doctor there performing brain surgery on another person. So they rushed him in, and the doctors during the surgery told my mother that I was either going to die or be a vegetable. And my mother stayed with me while I went through almost a 2.5 day coma. And when I woke up, I was tangled in a barrage of tubes and wires. And I remember looking up at the light, and my mother was, with her beautiful face, looking at me, holding me, telling me it was going to be okay. And I spent the next 3 years of my life in a school to be rehabilitated because I couldn't walk or talk or read or write. And it was after 3 years that I walked out of that school tall and strong and on my own. And I remember my mother was sitting at the front gate waiting for me with tears streaming down her face, which so eloquently proved to me that happiness that day was not about pleasure. That day happiness was about victory because quitting was an option.
Mm-hmm. Now, so you're saying that going through that helped you to kind of just feel that you can overcome things even whenever they say, okay, Robert, you're not gonna walk. You're not gonna walk. If you do live, you're gonna be a vegetable. That just kind of shows you that if you put your mind to it and you really believe, you can definitely do it.
Well, in the book, on the front of the book, I talk about don't let where you came from dictate who you are, but let it be part of who you become, and to respect your roots. My whole life, people told me I was never going to be nobody. Said, Robert, you ain't never going to be nobody. You're just like your dad, a heroin addict. Or you're going to end up in jail like your uncles and your cousins who are trafficking guns or selling drugs. And I knew as long as I had a corazón, a heart, as long as we have a heart, we always have a chance. Mm-hmm. So I didn't listen to those people because those people are called what? They're called haters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like my grandpa said growing up, because, you show me your friends, I'll tell you who you are. So surround yourself around good people who can help elevate you and lift you up. Mm-hmm. So you can spread your wings and fly like the angel God intended you to be. Definitely. So, I didn't listen to those people, and I still don't.
Yeah. Now, what happened in those next couple of years growing up, throughout your teenage years? I know that you were involved with kind of a darker crowd. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Well, what happened was I was abused. My mother remarried, and the guy, he was a hardworking guy, but he was abusive, a bad drunk. And he usually, after he'd had too much to drink, come in at night, 1, 2 in the morning, he'd grow hair on his chest like a werewolf, and he'd come in, he'd take me out of the room and beat on me till I was black and blue. And I was just a little guy, what are you going to do? So when I got old enough, I ran away. And I started running and gunning. Started running around some bad people, doing some bad things, you know. Have I stole cars? Yes. Have I broken into people's houses? Yes. Have I sold drugs? Yes. Am I proud of what I've done? Absolutely not. And guilt is a very heavy burden for you to carry around for the rest of your life. So I dropped out of school in the 11th grade, and I spent the next few years, you know, just running around with the wrong people until my father died in a halfway house on Skid Row. And I went to go see where he lived because I didn't know him, and so I got the death certificate, and I went through this flop house, and it was stale smelling, it was flickering lights, and there was prostitutes and pimps and derelicts and alcoholics reaching out to me asking me for money. And I finally made it to the front door, and I turned the key and I opened the door, and it was like deja vu because he had left me again the same way he had left me when I was only 3 years old, was more empty bottles of booze in the trash can. See, people in life think that you can control drugs and control alcohol, but they'll always, no matter what, take control of you. My father's death proved to me that if you play with that devil, if you play with the devil, you're going to get burned. So I spent the next few years like a dog chasing his tail, and I want to tell you a story tonight that's not in the book. You know, I delivered some drugs to this guy's apartment, and I opened up the briefcase, I showed him the drugs. He opened his briefcase, and I thought he was going to give me the money. But what happened was he pulled out a gun. And he pulled the gun in my head, and he said, say goodnight, and he pulled the trigger, and it was a misfire, because the bullet doesn't lie. So I tackled him to the floor, and I jumped out the front window, and I'm running down the street, scared to death, bleeding, my heart's pounding out of my chest. I remember saying, God, if you let me live, I'll sin no more. And I got in my Volkswagen, and I drove to my grandfather's house, and that's where the book picks up. And he pulled me aside. He says, you got to get out of here, because if you don't, you can be dead or in prison. Or best case, I'm dead in a factory job. And I love my grandfather, and I listened to him. So what I did was I went back to school, and I got my GED, and I joined the military. And the military not only changed my life, it saved my life, and it not only made me a man, but it made me a better man.
And you were with the U.S. Army for seven years, correct?
Yeah, I honorably served the U.S. Armed Forces for 7 years, 2 months, 13 days, 8 hours, and 14 minutes or something like that.
How was that?
I was a non-commissioned officer. I traveled all over the world. I jumped out of helicopters and airplanes. I rappelled. I served in psychological operations, military intelligence. And I ended up spearheading reactivation of the 3rd Special Forces Group at Fort Bragg.
Wow. Now, would you have seen yourself there 5 years prior to joining?
No, I wasn't thinking beyond the day. I was thinking about just survival. You know, what am I going to do tomorrow?
Right.
Or what am I going to do tonight? You know, where are we going to go party?
Yeah, right.
You know, and your life you have to plan. Because if you don't, it's like playing darts blindfolded. You can't hit a target you can't see, and you can't reach a goal you don't have.
Now, what is it about the U.S. Army that made you want to join them as opposed to doing something else?
Well, I didn't have a lot of choices at the time, and I needed to get away because these guys were coming after me. I mean, the fact was I served over 7 years. When I went back to Los Angeles, because I thought I was ready, right? I learned a lot about character, and you know, because character is not just doing what's right when somebody's watching, it's doing what's right nobody's watching you. I learned more about honor and respect and camaraderie and teamwork and pride. And these guys, when I went back home, you know, they called me a punk and a sellout because I wouldn't run with them anymore. They had elevated their game to dealing heavy drugs, right? Some of them got killed in drug violence and gang violence, and others are doing hard time in a federal penitentiary. Looking forward to what? 3 hots and a cot, being told what to do, how to walk, how to talk, when to eat, when to sleep. That's not life.
No.
So that's why I came to Chicago in 1990 with $200 in a duffel bag.
Wow. So then 7 years after the Army, or 7 years after first joining the Army, you come home and you see everything going on. And then do you want to tell us a bit more about moving to Chicago and how you kind of just ended up?
Well, what happened was I met this guy, and he had lived in Chicago. And he says, if you're going to come visit or get away, call me. And I needed to get away, and that's the only guy I knew that was out of the state. So I called him, and he lived in an apartment in Lisle, next to Naperville. Mm-hmm. He had a 1-bedroom apartment. So when I got there, I slept on the floor. I had blankets and pillows, and all I could afford to eat back then was Arby's sandwiches 5 for $5. Wow. And I had a half a sandwich in the morning, half a sandwich at night. I drank a lot of water. I lost a lot of weight. And I said, I want to get a job. And when I get that job, I want to be somebody. So 3 months later, I got that job, and I worked hard every day, every week, and every holiday. While others were taking vacations and partying at Lake Michigan, I was working, and they never saw me coming because 6 years later I was vice president of a publicly traded company on New York Stock Exchange.
Holy cow!
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
And I'm going to share a story that it's in the book, but one of the greatest things and moments of my life is when I did make it to corporate America and I was vice president of that publicly traded company. That first year I received a sizable bonus. I think it was like $42,000. And instead of going on vacation or instead of going to buy myself something, I went home and I took my mother to lunch and I gave her a gift bag for Christmas. And I said, Merry Christmas. And she says, what is it? And I said, what do you think it is? She goes, jewelry, because girls love jewelry, right?
Yeah.
So I said, no, open it up. So she opens up the bag and it's a set of keys. And she looks at me really confused. I'll never forget. And she says, Mijo, what does this mean? And I remember looking at her with a lump in my throat. And I said, Mama, I said, this means you'll never have to take the bus again. And that was one of the greatest moments in the history of my life.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
What did she do when you said that?
Well, it's actually funny because, we started crying, of course. I admit that I cried, but, so I hugged her. We went outside to the car. I had a big red ribbon around the car. And she takes the keys and she's like scratching it because she couldn't get the key to open the car back then. This is before we had those automatic remotes.
Yeah, right.
And so she actually didn't drive the car home. I drove the car home for her and it sat at her garage for 3 days because she was scared to drive it. So it was quite a moment.
So then where does your story go from there then?
Well, I call it climbing the broken ladder of corporate America for 6 years, and I decided it was time to take a shot. And I'm not talking about a shot of tequila. I'm talking about taking a shot and opening your own business. And I had saved some money, and I thought I had gotten my college or business degree in corporate America, so to speak. I had learned how to run a business. And I was pretty connected back then, so what I decided to do was open my own business. And I opened my business in 2001, and 3 years later, we were the #1 distribution company in the United States.
Wow.
And then it was about into the 8th year that I was inspired by a kid to write a book. And I pulled up in front of a local restaurant. He wasn't a kid, he was a young man, okay? So he wanted to know what my secret was because I was driving a brand new Mercedes-Benz at the time. So I invited him in, we have a beer together, and he looks at me and he says, so what's your secret? And I said, I want you to get a napkin and a pen from the bartender because I want you to write this down. I said 2 words. First word is hard and the second word is work. He looks at the napkin, he looks a little confused, he says, Robert, hard work, that's the secret? I said, that's the secret. He put the napkin in his pocket, he shook my hand, he ran out the door like I gave him gold, and he drove away, and I'm thinking, I said, there's a story here. We have money for wars and can't feed the poor. Mm-hmm. We have children, teenagers, and adults alike walking around lost in a culture of darkness. I want to do something about it. I want to write a book. Mm-hmm. And this book is going to be my way to give back to our culture, what was given to me by our culture, which is persistence and pride. Mm-hmm. It's going to be used to motivate and inspire them to make better choices and avoid the detours that I took in my life. And I really thought at the time when I wrote the book, it took 2 years to write the book. I thought I was going to do it in 3 months, but it took 2 years to write the book. And when the book came out, I really thought naively at the time I was done. I wrote a book. How cool is that, right? And we put it on the internet, we created a website, and I went back to work. And then I got a phone call 4 years ago on January 11th that forever changed my life. The Beacon News, I got a hold of the books, and with the book at the time, and they put it on the front page of the paper. And this lady called me at 7:30 in the morning. That's when I still had a house phone. Now everybody's got cell phones, right? Mm-hmm. But I had a house phone. And she said, are you Robert Renteria? And I said, yes. She goes, I just read your article in the Beacon News, and I hadn't seen the paper yet. And I said, well, how can I help you? And then she said, actually what happened was she paused, and I could hear that she was crying. And after about 15, 20 seconds, I said, what's wrong? And then she said, I'll never forget, she said, Robert, where have you been? And I stood there with chills up and down my spine, realizing not only was I not done with the book, but my life and the journey had just begun. So since the book has come out 4 years ago, the original book, first edition, the Chicago Public Schools got a hold of the book, and they created a curriculum for the book, mm-hmm. which meets the Illinois State Learning Standards. So they teach the book in schools. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then a group called RFB&D, Reading for the Blind and Dyslexic, got a hold of the book because I was handicapped for 3 years. And they created a CD version of the book to help those who are visually impaired or have reading disabilities. And that's a national platform. 236,000 people are affected by that. So that happened. And then shortly after that, the churches got a hold of the book, and they wanted to create a faith-based curriculum for the book. Because they said, we see the kids in the hood with your book, we can't get them to church. Mm-hmm. So they created a curriculum for the book as well. So now I had a school-based curriculum, a faith-based curriculum, and a CD version helping handicapped children. Mm-hmm. And then about a year or so went by, and I had some kids talking to me, and they said, I just read your book to my parents. And I said, well, don't your parents read? They said they don't read English. So I said, I got to translate the book. So I translated the book into Spanish. So then a short time after that, I saw a need to create a foundation, the Barrio Foundation, which I'm chairman and CEO of the foundation, a 501c3 non-for-profit. So now I'm into my third year, and I'm watching the book being used in middle schools, high schools, colleges, higher education, jails, youth prisons, battered women's shelters, social service agencies, political platforms, but I wasn't getting to the elementary schools.
Mm-hmm.
I said, now what if I had a tool that could literally cut the umbilical cord to all the gang recruitment that happens in the elementary schools? So the idea came up for a graphic novel, comic book. So last year we just released the graphic novel Mi Barrio, and that is also in English and Spanish. And what we did is we brought the book to life in pictures, okay? And it helps those who maybe don't like to read, or maybe those in the jails who can't read very well. So that's why the jails are picking them up.
Mm-hmm.
So then, in just a few months ago now, we just put the books, both books for the Barrio to the Boardroom and Mi Barrio into digital format. And we did a rewrite. We did a rewrite of the first edition from the Barrio to the Boardroom, second edition, and I'm proud to say that the foreword was written by State Senator Iris Martinez.
Yeah.
And the graphic novel, I'm proud to say that the foreword was written by State Representative Linda Chapalavia.
Wow.
It's fantastic.
How did you get them to write an introduction for your books? How did that go about?
I asked both of them to walk with me, and they said they would walk with me. See, the goal is with using these books is to help to change the landscape for our youth across America by changing these books right here that you're holding for all the guns, knives, drugs, needles, booze, and even the cigarettes, and that's the goal.
Well, see, I was sitting in class about a week back, and we're talking about leadership and what it means to be a good leader. And the main thing that my professor kept on pushing was that people follow leaders not for their leader's sake, but for their own sake. You know, so you asking these people to take a walk with you and take a leap with you, you know, and then you have somebody calling you and saying, Robert, where have you been? You know, I mean, people are being reached. You know, you are reaching so many people, and you're doing such a great thing. I mean, people, especially young kids, man, you know, out there, they need some guidance because, you know, you got so many parents in jail and they're dead, and it seems like Hispanics just have so little to look for. You know, I don't know what it is. It just seems like up until recently in the last couple of years, just there's nobody out there really pulling us up. You know, pulling us up whenever we need help up, and that's definitely what you were doing here. If not more. And one of the main questions that I have for you is, sitting here now and just taking a second, even Robert, and just closing your eyes and just picturing where you were 30 years back and where you are now sitting here, and the fact that we're talking about something that you've written. This is your story, and like you said, you know, it's also all of our stories in the sense that, you know, we all go through hard times. But I mean, sitting here now and knowing that these beautiful tools are going to really help people through, and they're going to give. Had these books not been written, people's lives would be drastically changed. I mean, how do you feel about having that much of a positive impact?
Well, I realized, you know, when I had so-called made it, you know, I had a house on a pond and nice car, clothes, vacations. I thought I had everything I wanted. Then I realized that the two greatest days in your life are the day you're born and the day you realize why you're born. So I've taken a blind leap of faith to serve a higher purpose, and now this is my moral calling. Mm-hmm. Right, so, you know, and these books, we call them books or tools. They're not just books with words, but a burning message of hope and dreams, because for generations to come and for decades to follow till the end of time, people will be turning pages to those two books right there. Mm-hmm. So to take it to the next level, what I've decided to do this year is I went back to the hood where I grew up last year, and we shot a trailer. And we've done script, and we've worked with some people in Hollywood now, and now we're raising funds. We need to raise funds to shoot the pilot for a reality TV show called Second Chances. And the goal is to reach millions of kids around the world, right? To have them realize that they can be anybody they want to be if they just believe in themselves. Mm-hmm. So that's the goal for the reality TV show.
Now, there's something really big here about it being a reality show and not an actual scripted show. And I mean, you know, I'm sure I know why that is, but would you want to just talk a bit about why you don't want it to be scripted?
Well, I don't want this. I mean, everything's competitive in life, you know, and that's what makes the world goes wrong. But I think that I want these kids to understand that if they believe and they look deep within themselves, the answer's within them. They just have to have somebody push them along a little bit and just give them a lift up.
Mhm.
You know, I didn't have any male role models in my life, but like I wrote in the book, you know, I stole with pride because there was a lot of good people out there that I watched. So I take a little bit of good from you, or maybe your dad or your friend, and I mold and develop the man that I became today. So I want them to know that the greatest role model itself is the world itself and all the tangible things it has to offer. And not to be afraid to ask for help. Because as Latinos, we have a lot of pride, and that's good. It makes you strong and moves you along, but it also gets in the way.
No, most definitely. So you would like to have a show, and when would you like to see that off the ground?
By summertime.
By summertime.
We plan on shooting the pilot this year downtown Chicago at a law firm overlooking Lake Michigan, the boardroom. And then from that point, we're taking it to the studios and get this thing out there.
That's awesome.
Right, that's the plan for this year.
Are you thinking about writing any more books, or?
I got to say that writing a book's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And it's a big commitment. My goal now is to engage with the community to get them involved. Okay? I've spent to date, just to develop the program and the foundation, north of $300,000 of my own money.
Mm-hmm.
So there's corporations out there, there's philanthropy, there's companies out there who, if they're looking to get involved and change the lives of our youth, I ask them to engage.
Mm-hmm.
And they go to my website at www.fromthebarrio.com, or you're more than welcome to call me direct. I'm wired 24/7 at 312-933-5619. I ask you to please get involved.
Definitely. So Robert, I just want to take a second and just thank you very, very much for
Absolutely.
being on.
Thank you for having me.
Tonight. Seriously, this has been great. And just to ask, this is going to be my last question for you. And we've kind of covered it with, talking about people getting involved with your foundation and helping that to grow, working on a show, possibly writing another book. Where would you like to be in 5 years? Like, what would you like to have off the ground? Who would you have liked to have reached that you haven't? Like, what would you have liked to have under your belt in 5 more years?
Well, I'd like to translate the book in multiple languages. I'd also like to do a documentary, possibly with James Edward Olmos or Eva Longoria. And I'd like to make sure these books are translated into multiple languages. I mean, we've shipped books out recently to China, Brazil, the Philippines, Pakistan, South America, and if I had said Colombia, Mexico. I mean, so the need is there. See, because kids don't know color, kids know love. Okay, so I'm gonna let these kids know that I love them, that we love them, that we can make a difference.
Most definitely.
Definitely. And may I also add, the way actually we got in touch was by you actually came to my high school, Westmont High School, and you spoke, and what you said just really, this was about 2 years ago, and it really just connected with me, I mean, yeah, and it's just, like you really feel like you're there engaged and everything, so I really thank you for that as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thanks for, paying it forward. That's what it's
definitely,
about.
Robert. Yeah, definitely. No, you're helping so many people every single day, and the sense of so many people are reading this book every single day for the first time. It's definitely doing very, very great things. And it's funny, because you watch movies like Stand and Deliver, and movies like that about people's success stories. But I mean, you are the real deal. You are the first person I've ever actually met that should have a movie written on their lives, just because this is really, really something. You really did it, and you have people telling you that all the time, but that's respect, because you knew what you had to do, and you just changed it, and you still remember. You were still the same person you were. You just changed certain habits and just buckled down and found yourself. I think so.
Well, thank you. How much time do we have? I want to tell you something else real quick.
Oh no, yeah, go ahead.
In 1923, there was a man who went to Hollywood with a grand idea, and he pitched it to all the studios, and they laughed at him. They told him it couldn't be done. So literally, with a Mickey Mouse bank account, he started his own business and built an empire.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Walt Disney. And Walt Disney said, if you see it, you can be it. So to the kids that are out there listening, I want you to go out there, paint a picture for yourself, and go out there and chase it till you catch it. Because you can be anybody you want to be, and if you see it, you could be it.
Well, Robert, thank you very, very much for being on with us tonight, sir.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Everybody out there listening, you can check out more about Robert Renteria at www.fromthebarrio.com. Please get involved, people. Robert's doing some really, really great things for people, and people definitely need him and the message that he's out there giving. So, and then you guys can also reach Robert directly at 1-312-933-5619. Again, 1-312-933-5619 and www.fromthebarrio.com. This is Good Times Friday and Good Times Radio TV. We'll be back after this.